Welcome everyone to Melfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about The Penguin episode 5. It's called Homecoming. The spoilers for the episode as always. And I suppose it was inevitable. We were going to hit an episode which I sometimes bring up this phrase to talk about a less than exciting episode of a TV show, which is the moving the pieces around the chessboard episode, where there's a lot of things to set up for where we're going for the rest of the season. You know, we've got, 3 episodes left? This felt like it had a lot of things to do. There's some really good bits in it, don't get me wrong. This is not me saying that there wasn't anything enjoyable in this. There's one particular scene involving fire that I very much liked. A lot of Sophia's stuff still very, very good. But there was a lot of moving things around, some stuff with like Vic and Penguin's mum that felt like it kind of dragged things down a little bit. And just generally a lot of like little things kind of like, you know, it wasn't as focused or like all crescendoed in the set like together as well as some of the previous episodes did. It wasn't as satisfying as a full meal. So I do think this is the weakest episode of the show so far, and with a bit of luck, it will be the weakest one in general once we're finished, right? I suspect that this was mainly about getting things in place, which is not to say, again, that I didn't enjoy quite a bit of this or I'm not into what the show is doing for the most part. Like I say, the whole trade-off, like, I mean, Penguin's whole plan early on in this episode to steal the Maroni's son and kidnap him and use him to, like, barter for the fancy mushrooms to get them back. So he'd basically taken on the Maronis and he's intending on obviously betraying them. I mean, I was actually thinking, oh, I bet that's not water that he's doused in. I bet that's something flammable. If anything, I was going to question why the mum wouldn't, you know, why Nadia wouldn't smell it, maybe. But I guess there's not enough time for her to really process it or take it in. But yeah, Penguin just straight up lights him on fire, and she, because she's hugging him or holding him, also gets set on fire, and they're standing there burning away to death. Penguin has probably done the darkest thing he's done in the show so far, just in case we had any doubts that he could cross some very serious lines. This is particularly rough looking. And in a good way, I mean, it didn't look bad. I mean, it's rough in a, like, psychotic kind of way. But anyway, so I quite like that. I also quite like the ending, which is Penguin getting kind of like his villain super, like, lair kind of thing. He takes Vic down into the sort of the tunnel systems where the trams used to run, and basically says, hey, this is a good place for the mushrooms, which, by the way, he only got 2 usable barrels of mushrooms. All the rest of them died. Perhaps because they were, you know, driving through the cold night air away from the scene of the crime and whatever else. You know, whether it was that it did it or the Maronis didn't take good care of them in the first place, I'm not sure. But regardless, most of them died. So the reason for coming down here, yeah, there's kind of a few reasons. One, he points out, which is that it's a good environment for the mushrooms to thrive in, and he wants to grow more of them. So that's one thing. My first instinct, though, was that this was more about the fact that Sal Maroni, who Penguin tried to have killed in prison this episode, survived, and now not only wants revenge on Penguin for that, but, you know, finds out that Penguin murdered his wife and son. So he's especially livid with Penguin. And of course, Sophia has gassed her whole family, which I did also really like how that was introduced into this episode. I love that we just started with Penguin doing his thing, talking to Maroni at the prison, and it's just as he's leaving, he sees on the news that the gassing has happened. I actually was thinking during that opening little stretch that maybe we wouldn't even see Sophia this episode. It would sort of leave that lingering for you know, the whole time. Maybe get a little tease at the end of like what's happening next with her. But we get a lot of stuff with her this episode as well. There's this pretty 50-50 on that front. I mean, Penguin's got some other stuff. I mean, Penguin's around. Like, I mean, the trade-off with the Maronis was kind of the big thing in the episode, and that was relatively early on. I mean, I guess it was maybe like halfway, but in terms of like all the stuff I remember mainly with him, that was mostly that. He does have a confrontation with Eve, his kind of girlfriend character, who doesn't want to go into hiding with them. She thinks she's safer elsewhere. I don't know if she actually says that out loud, but that's the vibe I was getting at the very least. And he has a bit of a freak out that she's kind of betraying him, or that, you know, he's done so much for her and she's not sticking by him. So, you know, she still kind of tries to convince him that she is, like, you know, she is his, like, you know, they are a thing, but right now it's better for him to go solo. Whether or not he's buying that, I would hasten to say no. But yeah, that's kind of like the other big thing. Up until he goes to Vic at the ending. Obviously, the thing that he has Vic do in the episode is go and look after his mother. Obviously, they have a scene at the start where they're burning his old car, and basically just establishes that he understands that Vic came back, and that's worth more than the car that needing to be destroyed, and he's proud of him. Blah blah. I assume this is all going to be dialing up to when Penguin throws Vic under the bus to make the final point in the show that Penguin is just out for himself, and he will, like maybe the one person that he is looking out for really is his mother, but she might die by the end of the season, and then when she's gone, he has no one to like put above himself, no one to look out for that he would like make sacrifices for. He is truly only for himself, like selfish kind of thing. So I suspect that's where it's going. The actual stuff with Vic looking after Penguin's mum, it is probably my least favorite part of the episode, I think, by a margin. I think mainly just because it feels like, while there might be some little snippets of things she says that open things up, I don't know if finding out more about Penguin's dead brother is really that exciting or feels like it's offering a ton of new insight whenever it comes up. And Penguin coming to see her eventually later on in the episode, and her kind of saying, oh, you can't even take care of your own mother, and pushing him away. I'm not so sure the drama between them is quite that engaging. I think like her character serves a purpose in the show as being Penguin's anchor, like the one last shred of like humanity he kind of seems to have. There is a purpose there, but I'm not so sure the story of her needing to be taken care of is all that compelling. Obviously, the big tease this episode is that character from Vic's past, Squid, is hanging around and does maybe catch a glimpse of her and Vic going into the building that they're hiding in. I think Squid is probably going to meet a nefarious end when he tries to mess with them, and Penguin is either there to begin with or comes in and has to deal with it. Or maybe not. Maybe Vic, this will be Vic leveling up and taking care of something himself and having to fight back against Squid on his own. Maybe that'll be his big kind of, turning into like someone who can actually kill someone kind of thing. I mean, arguably, maybe he did that with the car the last episode, but you know what I mean, in a more one-on-one kind of scenario. But yeah, I like the stuff's fine, like, but it definitely, along with this episode feeling a lot more fragmented and like a lot of little things going on, this definitely was like, not the most entertaining plot, and it kind of took up, a good third of the runtime probably. So it contributed to this being the weaker one overall. Sophia's stuff is mostly great. I say mostly because I do think the one negative on Sophia's plot this episode, everything with her, like her character specifically, is great. But the character of the Doctor, what's his name? Dr. Rush, played by Theo Rossi. Him just showing up and saying that he like understood that she needed to do this and he wants to be a part of it. He wants to feel that release. So he's like, just he wants in on it. His character's kind of weird to me right now. Obviously, I was kind of assuming he was just attracted to her, as well as feeling guilty about everything that happened in Arkham last episode. This episode with him just wanting to kind of like be a part of a crime family now just felt like a weird. I mean, maybe it is just because he still has the hots for her, but I mean, it does feel kind of weird, and it also like feels weird that she's just like, yeah, okay, fine, you can do that. So that's the one part of Sophia's plot this episode that I'm not in love with, but it's not so much her as much as his weird character that I'm not quite like connecting with or getting in any grand scale. Everything else with her though, having the sort of the one-on-one chat with the police chief, who as an actor was in the movie, and I only remember he was in the movie because his voice is so distinct and so raspy and hard to understand that I immediately went, oh yeah, I remember him from the Batman movie because he was hard to understand in that too. So he's around, that's the thing. But the main stuff going on is that she has VA tied up in like the mausoleum area of the grounds, and she pours cold water on him, lets him suffer by freezing, and is like, hey, you're going to show me where Dad's like sort of cash was, like his local like cash, like piggy bank that I can use, and makes it clear that she'll let him go if he tells her. He doesn't believe her, of course. He says that she's going to kill him, But ultimately, he tries to appeal to her in a sort of more long form way, where he tries to secure a future for himself by saying that he was actually trying to help her mum leave Carmine, that she was trying to run away with the kids. He set up a car for her to help her, but Carmine somehow found out, stopped her, and killed her. And Sophia, quite rightly, whether or not maybe he's telling the truth, maybe he's absolutely 100% being truthful when he says all that, but even if he is, Sophia rightfully points out, but you still worked for him for like another 20, 25 years or whatever it's been since then. So what's with that? Like, you cared about my mother so much, but you just sort of like sucked it up and worked for him because you were scared, because you still thought it was profitable for you, whatever. It kind of leaves there off more or less with that bit where he just kind of says, hey, if you just go out there and try and like say you're in charge now, like the army of the mob, like their crime family, won't just follow her blindly, but Viti can help her get that respect. It's not just about being the one left in the family, it's about actually commanding and having soldiers that want to fight a war for you. He says he can make that happen for her, and it kind of leaves us on that tease. And it's after the doctor character shows up that we get the big meeting scene where Sophia goes in, she puts on like her mum's fur coat, looks all what's the word? Glamorous, I guess. Like she's dressed up for the occasion. And she comes in and Viti's there. He's dressed up in a suit. He sits and presents her at the head of the table. And it seems like, yeah, he's going to do what he said he was going to do. And maybe this is just him being a snake because he realizes that she is dangerous enough to kill everyone in the family. And also that she is maybe going to be in charge now, so he should suck up and try and make sure he'll be safe. However, Sophia, in a surprising move, decides to tell everyone at this meeting that she killed the whole family, that she was behind it, explains that her mother was just tossed away and that she was just tossed away herself 10 years ago, and basically says, hey, none of you guys are that important in the system, because all the super important people were in the family who were killed basically by her, but you were all kind of the pawns. You weren't the main men. You were the patsies who were expendable, who if you die no one's going to care. You make us a bunch of money but you see very little of it. And basically the whole point of her speech here is to say that if they follow her, if they accept her as the new boss, she will pay them more than they ever get paid before. She will pay them fairly. She dumps out Carmine's big bag of money and says, hey, consider this a down payment. And they all sort of take, and by taking a wad of cash each, they basically are swearing their allegiance to Sophia. And she's basically saying, hey, I will, she believes in fair pay for her workers, her employees. She's a more, it's what I was saying last episode about her being a more lawful evil, where she's got, her own ethics that she adheres to. But it was basically a convincing play of her sort of gaining the trust and loyalty of the higher ranking foot soldiers that still exist for the family. And what's interesting is that halfway through all this, Viti tries to cut in and sort of say, what are you doing? This is not how you run things, Sophia. And he sort of turns to look at someone else, and she just pulls out a gun and shoots him in the back of the head. So Viti does die, right? Viti survived last episode, but he didn't survive for long. He is gone now. And it's almost like Sophia knew she was going to use him as like proof of concept to the rest of the men in the room. Right, obviously they're all a little bit uncomfortable and shocked when she kills him, but kind of makes it clear that he's part of the old guard. He was trying to stop what she was about to say, and what she's saying is, you guys deserve more, and I'm going to give it to you, right? Here's the more. I like the scene quite a bit. I think it was interesting seeing her in this position now where she's not vying for power. She's now, she's still trying to convince people she belongs there to an extent in this scene, but this was a lot more of her actually being the one with the power, and that's what she's been wanting for 4 episodes, and it's actually kind of exciting to see her in that role now. And she handles herself fairly well. She does not do what Viti thinks she should do, and it seems like it works. And she pulls out some other big plays by the end of the episode, of course, which is, she says she's going to end the war with the Maronis. Turns out, ending that war doesn't mean killing off the Maronis. It means aligning herself with the rest of like whoever's left, which is basically just Sal Maroni and his foot soldiers at this point, because his wife and son are dead. So she goes to see him by the end of the episode, and, you know, says, hey, Penguin's the one that, you know, ratted me out once upon a time. Everything that's happened to me kind of traces back to him. And as I understand it, you also don't like him very much right now. And says, hey, why don't we end this stupid war? You know, unite the families. And he, of course, says, oh, the Maronis and the Falcons hate each other. And this is where she brings up something that she also established in that earlier scene. Like, her crime family's not the Falcons anymore. They are the Gigantes, which was her mother's maiden name. She's Holly Gennaroing the Falcone crime family and saying, no, this is the name that we're using now. This is who we are. No one's allowed to say Falcone, and this is what it is. And she's making this deal to align with Sal, which is interesting because it means that Penguin isn't just in the middle playing two families against each other. Now the two families that he was trying to manipulate have joined forces, which feels like he's in a pretty rough spot. He's got a few loyal guys that he uses this episode for a couple of things, but yeah, it feels like the tension's going to ramp up, and what happens if they find out that Penguin does have a mother? He's clearly concerned about it, which is why he sends Vic to go and look after her and like take her somewhere that they wouldn't expect to find her if they do somehow track her down. So, you know, there's a lot going on. I feel like I just explained a lot of things that happened, because there is a lot of things happening, but there's less to sort of like dig into and kind of like enjoy the, you know, the subtext as much, right? You know, last episode there was a lot of little lines, a lot of like thematic things going on throughout the episode with Sophia that you could really sink your teeth into and talk about what's motivating her and all these things. There's a little bit of that episode. It's never completely gone, obviously, but this definitely was more of like a checklist of things happening, because we have to have all these characters in the right places for what's coming next. You know, there's nothing directly in this episode that motivates Sophia to do what she does. In fact, the audience are kept at kind of an arm's length so that they can surprise us when she goes to Maroni and tries to make that deal. And it seems like it's succeeding. He seems pretty tempted, at least visually, at the end of that scene. I think the implication is that he's going to agree to it, and that they are going to work together. And although I did like one detail, actually, she pointed out in this scene. She pointed out that, you know, Carmine never understood why Salvatore Maroni always seemed to like really care about his family in the way it did. Like, you know, they're always super loyal to each other. And Sal says something like, "Oh yeah, because you know the Falcons eat each other," and Sophia basically agrees. Of course, she agrees. She was one of the ones that was eaten in that metaphor, right? She was sent away and just thrown under the bus, and she's basically saying that she is like, hey, no, you Maronis had it right. You actually look like a family. You're a crime family, but you still actually look like a family who all care about each other and will stick up for each other. That was the right way of doing it, and this is why I'm coming to you. On some level, she's recognizing the qualities she thought she had in her family once upon a time. She's recognizing them in the Maronis. I did like that little comparison and pointing that out. I think that's your little nugget in that scene, as to, you know, what she recognizes in them. Because keep in mind, Sophia knows at this point that they did nothing. They had nothing to do with Alberto's death, right? That was something that was made clear from Nadia just before the car incident. So, like, she knows that now. She has no reason to hate them, really, other than maybe just there was war stuff happening between the families a long time ago. But that's pretty much it. A couple of Sophia's big moments. Oz getting his new crime, like, super villain lair at the end. Reminded me a lot of Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze, where they find their new, like, subway base in that movie. Right, it's very much that, but with a much more sinister overtone. And then the big moment where he sets the you know, Nadia and her son on fire, which that is a big moment. That is a huge moment, but it definitely is like the dramatic peak of the episode, I think, for me, that bit. Whereas the you know, after that, it kind of cooled down a little and felt like it was always kind of simmering along at that point. So, you know, like, sometimes these types of episodes are necessary, right? Some of the best shows ever need to have an episode that resets the board a little bit and just sets things up for all the more interesting episodes to come after. And from the sounds of the early reviews, it sounds like 6, 7, and 8 are all escalating, and like different people have different favorites based on those 3 episodes. But this felt like it was an episode that was necessary just to set the board. And that's fine, but it does inherently make it the least interesting or exciting episode of the entire season. At least the one so far. But I expect this to be the weakest episode of the show so far. Partly because the show has been so excellent. And even this episode has excellent little bits in it. It has excellent moments. You can sort of sense the quality, the performances are tip top as they have been. Penguin's got a lot of moments here where he realizes he's actually in the shit a little bit, and he is spinning too many plates, as Eve puts it. It's a little bit of that uncut gems magic of like that feeling of tension because the character's trying to juggle too much, and then it could all come crumbling down. I'm sure I made that comparison before, but someone else even says it in this episode, not the uncut gems part, but the spinning plates part, which is how I'd describe that movie. So yeah, like all the through lines are there, and it's it's still a solid watch because of that, but it definitely is the weakest of the five so far. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Penguin, and that'll about do it. So let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Of course, you can like, subscribe, those things help out a bunch, and of course you can help the most by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or using YouTube memberships if that's more your thing. But if you go over to Patreon, you also get the bonuses for the Mail Fuzz Movies channel where all the movie podcasts live, and there's even a review of the Batman over there, for example. But go check out those podcasts or whatever else. That's me. Thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?